Hey guys, welcome back to another video, and in today's video, I'm going to be updating you guys with my brand new 2024 presidential election prediction out of April. It's going to be updated from the previous month of March, and there's going to be a few changes to the electoral map in some of these swing states. But before we fill out the map, make sure you guys are subscribed and click the bell so you get notified whenever I upload a video instead of missing out on any of them. And also, we have memberships, so if you're looking for that, it's pinned in the comment section down below. Now, back to the topic of today's video, let's fill out the map. So, right off the bat, we have the two districts. Nebraska 2nd is going to go to Joe Biden by a lean margin. This was a Biden district back in the 2020 election, and you saw what happened. Republicans tried to make it a winner-take-all, in which they failed to do so. So that's going to go in favor of Biden. Obviously, that's a very liberal, and they have a lot of neocons in that district that will probably go in favor of Joe Biden. And then as for his Maine's 2nd congressional district, that is a safe district for Donald Trump. He's going to win it by double digits. And then as for Maine's at-large, Biden is actually polling within single digits, so that would arguably be lean to likely for Joe Biden for Maine's at-large. So now that we have the two districts out the way, the likely and safe states for Donald Trump is going to be Iowa. I think Trump cracks double digits, so anything over 10% is considered safe, in my opinion. It's just shifted too far to the right to be even at least close anymore. It's just too much out of reach for Joe Biden at this point. In Ohio, I think Trump might get close to cracking 10%, but in my opinion, he's going to get around 9%, so not quite double digits just yet. But other than that, it's still pretty much comfortably going to Donald Trump in this year's election cycle, as well as a state like Florida has just trended in favor. The shifts just, favor Republicans heavily, and you saw what happened in the 2022 midterms. Miami-Dade County actually flipped from blue to red in favor of Ron DeSantis, and Donald Trump is expected to flip Miami-Dade County in the 2024 election, and basically the entirety of Florida has just abandoned the Democratic Party. And then even a state like Texas, I think, would vote to Donald Trump by roughly 7 percentage points, which is considered a likely margin. Now, keep in mind, Trump won the state by roughly 5.3% in the 2020 election, so I have him doing 2% better from previously his 2020 margin, considering the border crisis, what's happening with immigration, and considering that Texas is indeed a border state. If that impacts voters a lot, and considering that immigration, if it is the number one issue priority that matters to voters the most, it's only going to go in favor of Donald Trump. And then obviously you have these third-party candidates. You factor Kennedy in. That will probably help Donald Trump. So now that we have the three likely states away for Donald Trump, I think Colorado is going to be safe for Joe Biden. In my opinion, he gets around 10%, so basically around his 2020 margin. Colorado is actually the complete opposite of nationwide. You see a lot of these swing states, Trump is leading a majority of them, but Colorado is the polar opposite, in which Biden is actually improving from his 2020 margin. So you can see the shifts and the trends in the state of Colorado go in favor of Biden. Basically, the entire state is just trending to the left in favor of Democrats. So I think Biden will comfortably win that. And then as for New Mexico, I think it will be a little bit more, slightly more competitive and closer than Colorado would be. I think Biden wins it by a projected margin of roughly within 7 to 9 percentage points, somewhere in between there. So even though it's still comfortably going to go to Biden, I still think it would be slightly more closer than a state like Colorado would be, especially considering that, the border crisis. New Mexico is a border state, so if voters are impacted by it, it would only go in favor of Donald Trump, but still that's not going to be enough of a shift to actually even, make New Mexico even somewhat close. I think Biden comfortably wins that. And then Albuquerque is obviously a Democratic stronghold, so if Biden is able to perform very well in there. And then now that we have the likely states out of the way, moving on to the lean states for both of these candidates. In my opinion, I think Georgia is going to be lean for Donald Trump, as well as a state like North Carolina, and even Wisconsin, I think, would be lean for Donald Trump. Let's begin with Georgia. Main reason why Biden flipped this state back in 2020. Keep in mind he won this by roughly 11,000 votes, which is 0.3%. And even though that margin was very slim, don't get me wrong, that's very good for any Democrat on the general election level to flip a state like Georgia, which typically favors Republicans on the general election. So I think Georgia would probably be one of the more likelier flips for Donald Trump in the 2024 election. I think will probably be way easier Main reason why Biden won this was because he got high turn among African American voters, in which I do not expect him to get the nearly 90% that he got among them. I think he can drop as low as 80%, and if Trump is lucky enough, Biden only gets roughly 70% of the overall black vote. And Trump is actually polling currently at roughly 1/4 among them, 25% among African American registered voters. So if that's the real numbers, then Trump is more than likely going to win the election, and basically the popular vote would also go in favor of Donald Trump than in recent elections past. So with that being said, I think Trump wins the state of Georgia in 2024 by roughly 4 to 5 percentage points, similar to his 2016 margin. And obviously 2020 was less favorable, so you saw a 6-point swing to the left in favor of Biden in the state of Georgia specifically, in which we will not be seeing this time around, because obviously Trump was facing a lot of outlash. You saw COVID, BLM, people wanted a change in leadership, so it favored Biden. But this time around, Biden is way less favorable than where he was 4 years ago. His approval rating is in the gutter, roughly at 39%. So considering that it's below 40%, Trump is gonna flip the state of Georgia easily in 2024. North Carolina, Biden was seen as more of a favorable candidate and more moderate in 2020. Now he's basically extremely unpopular. And with that being said, I think Trump wins North Carolina by roughly 3 to 4% in 2024. Keep in mind, he's polling at roughly 5% according to polling averages out of the month of April. So considering that, he's doing better than his 2016 margin. I think Trump can do wonders in North Carolina on election day. And then the lean states for Joe Biden, I think, would be the state of Minnesota. I think he wins that by roughly 5 percentage points. And then New Hampshire would also be lean for incumbent President Joe Biden, as well as a state like Virginia. So let's begin with Minnesota. I think obviously places like Minneapolis are Democratic strongholds. Those places shifted towards the left, and you saw what happened in 2020. BLM, Biden had that type of momentum. So if those type of people don't turn out this time around, it would make the margins way closer, and Trump might have a shot at making this state within 1 to 2 percentage points, in which Biden is actually only polling at roughly 3 to 4% in the state of Minnesota. And then obviously Biden is expected to perform very well among white suburban women and issues like abortion. So if that's the case, then I think Biden's going to win this state in 2024. Now, it may get close, it may get somewhat close, but it doesn't really matter, as no matter how close it gets, because even if Biden only wins it by a point or 2%, it's still going to go to Biden. Either way, I think Minnesota's a lock for him, and I think it's just out of reach for Trump, but it still can get very close. As independent candidates and third parties perform very well in this state, it might go in favor of Donald Trump. And then as for New Hampshire, I honestly think that goes to Biden by roughly 5%. Keep in mind, he won this by 7 percentage points in 2020. And I actually think Minnesota and New Hampshire vote in the same direction. They are very similar states. You take a look at the 2016 election. Both of these states, New Hampshire and Minnesota, voted to Clinton by 2%. And then in 2020, both of these states voted to Biden by 7%. So you can see they have the same margin. So I think both of these states would go to Biden in 2024 by 5 percentage points. And then as for Virginia, if you did not know, the governor there actually endorsed Donald Trump. Glenn Youngkin endorsed Trump. So I think that can make the margins tighten up and get way closer. Keep in mind, Biden won this state by double digits in 2020, roughly 10 percentage points. So this state is still a very Democratic state, even though it's still considered a swing state. But this time around, I think it can get within 6 to 7 points. Right now, Biden is only polling at roughly, I would say, 3 to 4% in the state, which is not good considering that he won by double digits last time, and he's losing roughly 6% of his margin of 2020. And considering that he got endorsed by the governor, by the way, Glenn Youngkin is sitting at a 58% approval rating as of today, I believe. Tell me if I'm wrong. So considering that's very good, but it's not going to be enough to flip the state, obviously. So Biden wins that by roughly 6% in my opinion. Before we move on to the tilt states, let's go to Wisconsin. Places like Milwaukee are typically Democratic strongholds, and if Biden underperforms there, then he's probably going to lose the state. And places like Green Bay are typically Republican strongholds. So it honestly comes down to who gets higher turnout, and obviously voter registration is very important, and Republicans, I believe, are doing very well in terms of that. Keep in mind, Biden won this state by a less margin than Trump did in 2016. Trump won it by 0.8%. Biden won it by 0.6%. So considering that Biden performed worse than Trump did by 0.2%, I can tell you right now that Wisconsin is more than likely going to flip to Trump in 2024. I can guarantee you that right now. I think Trump wins it by around 1%, maybe 1.5 percentage points. And now that we have the lean states out of the way, we're going to be moving on to the tilt states, where every other single state remaining will either be, within under percentage point for Biden or under percentage point for Donald Trump. That's what a tilt margin means. It means it's under a percentage point. So the tilt states for Joe Biden, in my prediction out of this month, is going to be Arizona. As you may saw, that Arizona Supreme Court ruled in favor of banning abortion with basically no exceptions whatsoever. Rape, incest, they say no, you cannot perform an abortion. The only thing they can do is if the life of the mother is at risk. And that's going back to 1864. So considering that, I think that goes in favor of Biden. And this is different from my prediction of March, in which I had Trump winning Arizona. Now I have Biden winning it, because I think that's only going to impact the race in favor of Joe Biden. And don't get me wrong, Trump is actually winning in Arizona according to polling averages. So whether you trust the polls or you don't, it is a fact that Trump is leading in this state. But this is my prediction, and as of right now, I think the entirety of Arizona is just trending and shifting to the left in favor of Democrats. I think basically Maricopa County will decide who wins this state. I really do. Biden won it by 2% in 2020, and Trump won it in 2016. So considering that, I think whatever happens in Maricopa would also decide who's the winner of Arizona at the end of the day. In each and every election cycle, Arizona shifts and trends towards the left by roughly 3 to 4 percentage points. And you're asking me, how do I get this information? Well, you take a look at 2008. John McCain won it by 11%. 2012, Mitt Romney won it by 7%. That is a 4% shift in favor of Democrats. And then in 2016, it went from 7 to 3%. That is a 4% shift in favor to the left. And then in 2020, it went to Biden by 0.4%. That is a 3% shift to the left. So that's where I get that information from, in which every single election cycle, it goes 3 to 4% to the left. So that's the only tilt state I have for Biden. And I honestly think Trump's going to flip Nevada, as well as Michigan and Pennsylvania in the 2024 presidential election. Let's begin with Nevada. Honestly, you take a look at Clark County, it's a Democratic stronghold. So if Biden is able to overperform the polls, in which he's actually performing very poorly in Clark County, which is why Trump is winning this state by roughly 4% on average, according to the polls. So the polls here, don't get me wrong, usually overestimate Republican chances. You saw what happened in the 2022 midterms. Adam Laxalt was expected to do very better than he actually performed. He lost to Catherine Cortez Masto. So considering that, I think Trump is definitely not going to come close to winning the state by 4%. What the polls are suggesting, I think it would be more accurate if he wins it by roughly 1 percentage point at the end of the day. So in my opinion, I think the polls will overestimate Trump. Republicans get overhyped in this state every single election cycle, and it's kind of getting annoying. So I think Biden has a chance at keeping Nevada, but in my opinion, I think Trump's going to win it. I think Biden will lose a lot of that support in the Vegas area, basically Clark County. And if Trump is able to flip Reno County in northwestern Nevada, I think Trump is on track to flip the state in 2024. And it basically comes down to minorities, Hispanics, and Asian Americans. If Trump is able to perform very well among those type of groups, in which he's actually, I believe, tied at the current moment among Hispanics against Biden. So I think that's very good, and that's going to help him with the popular vote. And then as for Michigan, you saw what happened in the Democratic primaries. Roughly 100,000 people voted uncommitted, and now you may make the case that still 19,000 people voted uncommitted in the 2020 Democratic primaries. So what's the difference? Well, 81,000 people more voted in the 2024 primaries uncommitted. So that's a whole lot of difference. And obviously that alone is not enough to flip the state, but if you factor in things like RFK Jr. helping Donald Trump, taking away a lot of that support, and independents or undecided voters going in favor of Donald Trump, then yes, that will be enough to actually flip the state. Keep in mind, Biden won the state by over 200,000 votes, which is almost 3% in 2020. And obviously, he got endorsed by the governor, Gretchen Whitmer, in which she is very popular there, so it might help Biden at the end of the day. But considering the state of the economy and inflation and grocery store prices, gas prices, and what you're paying overall, Small businesses, if they're not doing very well, I honestly think Trump wins this. But keep in mind that the Detroit area is shifting to the left in favor of Democrats. And, when it comes to suburban women, it honestly can help Biden. And Trump's stances on abortion, well, he actually is more moderate now. Recently, he just came out with a statement saying he will not sign a federal abortion ban. And so I think that's going to help him. And then as for Pennsylvania, Biden won this state by roughly 80,000 votes, which is 1.2% to be exact. I think places like Philadelphia or the Pittsburgh suburbs, usually Democratic strongholds, if Biden is able to overperform on what the polls are saying, I think he could keep the state blue in 2024. But at the current moment, I honestly think Trump wins this because I think if Michigan votes to the right, Pennsylvania would also obviously follow and do the same thing. You don't really see the three Rust Belt states break apart and split. Like, for example, Wisconsin votes to the right, but Michigan and Pennsylvania vote to the left. You don't really see that. All these three Rust Belt states votes in one direction. And 2020, the three Rust Belt states voted for Biden. In 2016, but all three of them voted for Trump. In 2012, all three of them voted for Obama. Yes, you never see them break apart. So with that being said, I think Trump gets all three of them. It's basically winner take all. If one Rust Belt states votes to the right, then the other two will follow, obviously. You won't see Michigan voting for Trump, but Wisconsin, Pennsylvania voting for Biden. That's just odd. And I think whatever happens in Erie County, I think that's very important because Erie County kind of reminds me of Maricopa in Arizona. And if Biden wins it again, which he did in 2020, I think he can win Pennsylvania. And keep in mind that Trump won it in 2016, but Biden flipped Erie County in 2020. It's located in northwestern Pennsylvania, so I think that's very important. So at the end of the day, Trump wins with 301 electoral votes to Joe Biden's 237. It changes from March's prediction. I had Trump winning Arizona, now I have Biden winning it, and that's basically the only difference. So let me know what states you agree with and what states you disagree with in the comment section down below. This is my current prediction as of the month of April. I have Trump winning, and don't forget to subscribe and click the bell so you get notified whenever I upload a video instead of missing out on any of them. And also, we have memberships, so if you're looking for that, it's pinned in the comment section down below. Thank you everyone for watching.